My wife cheated with her boss, then suddenly filed for divorce claiming I stole $200, $0 from her inheritance. Now we're fighting over a beachfront house worth over $1 million I never even knew about. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be the biggest liar and cheat I've ever known. Honestly, I thought we had a good thing going. We had our ups and downs, sure, but I never suspected she was capable of the kind of betrayal I uncovered. The most unexpected moment hit me like a freight train. One night, I stumbled onto something that shattered my entire world. It started with small things. Lisa had been acting weird for a few weeks, distracted, secretive, always on her phone late at night. She'd brush me off when I asked about her day, snapping at me for invading her privacy. I noticed she was spending more time on her laptop than usual, always closing windows quickly when I walked into the room. I didn't think much of it at first. People get busy, right? But then I started noticing little inconsistencies. Her phone kept vanishing, and she was suddenly very protective of her messages. One evening, I decided to check her email on her laptop when she went to the grocery store. I know it's not exactly noble, but I was just curious. I didn't think I'd find anything. Instead, I found a string of emails between her and her boss, Mark. The subject lines were innocuous: meeting schedule, project updates, but the content was anything but innocent. They were talking about late-night meetings, secret dinners, and there were explicit texts too. I saw her describing intimate details, how she loved the way Mark touched her, how much she craved him. She even told him she was planning to leave me. My stomach dropped. I was frozen, staring at the screen. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My wife, my partner, the woman I thought I knew, was sleeping with her boss. And it wasn't just a fling. It looked like they'd been sneaking around for months. I saw how she called him baby, how she planned to run away with him after her inheritance, which was supposed to be her safety net. I'd never even heard about this inheritance until that night. Turns out she inherited a beachfront house worth over $1 million from her grandmother, and she'd kept it a secret from me. I felt sick. My first instinct was rage. How could she do this to me, to us? But underneath that was a cold, simmering confusion. Why? How did it get to this point? I thought we were solid. I thought I was providing for her, making her happy. Turns out she was planning her escape, money and all, with this guy Mark. I kept rereading those emails, trying to make sense of it, trying to understand what I did wrong. But honestly, I couldn't find a reason. She'd always been bitchy, demanding, and quick to lie, but I never thought she'd cheat on me with her boss and keep a secret inheritance from me. That was the kicker. She was planning to take her money, leave me, and start a new life with Mark, all behind my back. I sat there, stunned, feeling my world collapse around me. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept looking at those emails, feeling betrayed, humiliated, and furious. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't want to do it without thinking. I needed a plan. I needed to understand her motives, her lies, everything. That's when I realized this was bigger than I thought. It wasn't just about her cheating. It was about a calculated betrayal involving money, secrets, and a future I never saw coming. I didn't tell her I knew. I played it cool for a couple of days, pretending everything was normal, but inside I was boiling. I started gathering evidence, taking screenshots of the emails, saving her messages. I wanted to be prepared. I had no idea how she'd react when I finally called her out. I just knew I couldn't keep living in this fog of lies. Something had to give. And I was about to find out just how deep her lies went, and how far I was willing to go to get my answers. The day I decided to confront Lisa, I felt like I was walking into a storm I couldn't control. My mind was racing with every possible reaction she could have: anger, denial, maybe even some twisted version of guilt. I had the evidence, every email, every message, saved neatly on my phone and laptop. I knew I had to be calm, but inside I was anything but. I waited until she came home from work, pretending everything was normal. She was her usual bitchy self, snapping at the dog, throwing around her designer purse like she owned the damn world. I kept my composure, but my hands were shaking. When she finally sat down across from me at the dinner table, I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Lisa, I know about Mark. I know about the emails. I know you've been sleeping with him, and I know about the inheritance. Her face froze for a split second. Then the mask of bitchy arrogance slipped into something else, maybe panic, maybe rage. She scoffed, rolled her eyes, and said, "Oh, really? You're so paranoid. You've been snooping, haven't you? Typical, just like a jealous husband." I didn't flinch. I slid my phone across the table, displaying the screenshots. "No, Lisa, I've been gathering evidence. I know everything. The affair, the inheritance, your plans to leave me. How long has this been going on?" She looked at the screen, then back at me, her eyes narrowing. "You're crazy. You've got no proof. You're just jealous because Mark is successful and handsome. You're insecure, that's all this is." I shook my head. "Don't lie to me. I know about the secret meetings, the late nights, the texts. I saw the emails. I saw how you called him baby, how you talked about leaving me after the inheritance. You've been planning this for months." Her face twisted into a sneer. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're just upset because I don't want to live in your shadow anymore. I deserve better than this boring, stupid life with you. Mark makes me feel alive. And that house, that's mine. I inherited it. I don't need your permission to do anything with it." I felt my blood boil. That house, that inheritance, it was a whole other level of betrayal. She kept it a secret, and now she's throwing it in my face like some kind of trophy. I asked her, "So you're just going to walk away with all this? Leave me with nothing?" She smirked. "You're not entitled to anything. You're just a stupid husband who's been wasting my time. Mark's the real man I want. The house, it's mine, and I'll do what I want with it. You've got no say." That's when I snapped. I told her I wasn't going to stand for her lies anymore. I told her I'd fight her for everything, her money, that house, even the divorce if she wanted one. I felt a strange mix of anger, sadness, and a bitter sense of betrayal. I thought I knew her, but I was wrong. She was a different person, a selfish, manipulative bitch who'd been using me from the start. That night, after she stormed off to her bedroom, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the evidence I'd collected. I couldn't believe how far she'd gone. She lied, cheated, and now she was trying to steal what was supposed to be our future. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of lies, and I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with it, not without a fight. The next few days were a blur. I contacted a lawyer, started digging into the inheritance records, and planned my next move. But inside, I was crushed. How could she do this? How could she look me in the eye and lie so effortlessly? I kept asking myself if I'd missed the signs, if I'd been blind to her true nature all along. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about infidelity or money. It was about betrayal on a level I never expected. I realized I was in a war I didn't want to fight, but I had no choice. I wanted justice, I wanted the truth, and I wanted to make sure she didn't get away with destroying what little trust we had left. I didn't know how far she'd go to keep her lies hidden, but I was ready to find out. Because this wasn't just about her cheating. I was about to expose the biggest scam of her life, and I was determined to come out on top. Over the next week, everything moved faster than I expected. I was still reeling from the confrontation, trying to process how deep her lies went, but I knew I couldn't just sit around and let her keep pulling the strings. I hired a lawyer who specialized in inheritance and divorce cases, and from there, things started to escalate quickly. She was playing the victim, of course, calling me paranoid, accusing me of stalking her, and trying to spin her affair as just a mistake. But I wasn't buying it anymore. The lawyer told me I had a solid case for the inheritance, especially since Lisa hadn't disclosed it to me, and I had proof of her affair with Mark. The inheritance was legally mine if I could prove she'd been hiding it to leverage it in a divorce. It was a huge blow to her, but she responded by doubling down on her lies. She claimed she inherited the house from her grandmother, yes, but that I had no right to it because we weren't married when she inherited it. She insisted it was hers alone, even though I knew she'd kept the details secret because she was planning to leave me with her money. Meanwhile, she was trying to convince her friends that I was the crazy one, that I was just jealous and insecure. She painted herself as the victim, saying I'd been controlling and possessive. But I had enough of her lies. I started digging into her bank accounts, looking for anything that could support my claim. That's when I found something that made my blood run cold: transfers, large sums of money, and suspicious withdrawals that lined up with the timeline of her affair. She'd been funneling money into secret accounts, probably to fund her escape plan. One night I decided to follow her. She said she was going out with her friend, but I knew better. I parked nearby and watched her slip into a fancy hotel downtown. I took pictures, recorded her coming out the next morning with her bags, looking disheveled but still trying to act innocent. That was the final straw. She was clearly planning to run away with Mark, maybe even trying to set up a new life while leaving me with nothing. I confronted her the next day, showing her the evidence. She threw a fit, screaming, calling me crazy, accusing me of stalking her again. She tried to deny everything, but I had the proof. I told her I'd be going to court, that I wanted my fair share of the inheritance, and that I wasn't going to let her steal everything from me. Her face twisted in anger and she spat out, "You're just jealous because Mark doesn't want a boring wife like you. You're old news anyway, I've moved on." That was a punch too. The gut, moving on. She was planning her escape and I was just some obstacle in her way. But I refused to let her walk all over me. I knew I had the upper hand now and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. The more she lied and manipulated, the more determined I became to expose her for the fraud she was. Things got uglier after that. She started threatening me, saying if I went to court, she'd fight dirty, drag my name through the mud, and make sure I got nothing. She even claimed I'd stolen money from her inheritance, which was laughable because I had never touched her money. All I wanted was what was legally mine, and I was prepared to go to war over it. I kept telling myself this was about justice, about making her accountable for the lies and deception she'd spun. Behind the scenes, I was plotting my next move. I hired a private investigator to gather more evidence, photos, recordings, even witnesses who could testify that Lisa had been planning her escape for months. I also started talking to some of her friends, trying to find out what she'd been telling them. Turns out she'd been spinning stories about how I was abusive and controlling just to make herself look innocent. I didn't care what her friends thought anymore. I just needed to win this fight. The biggest shock came when I discovered she'd secretly transferred a large chunk of her inheritance into a foreign account. That was the moment I realized she'd planned this from the start. Hide the money, cheat on me, then leave me with nothing. I felt a mixture of disgust and determination. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I was going to fight for everything, her money, the house, my dignity. In the middle of all this chaos, I also started to feel a strange sense of clarity. I'd been blind for so long, believing in the fairy tale of our marriage. But now I saw her for what she really was, a selfish, manipulative woman who'd lie, cheat, and steal to get what she wanted. I didn't know how this was going to end, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going down without a fight. I was going to expose her lies, reclaim what was mine, and make sure she never pulled this stunt on anyone else again. By now, the legal battle was in full swing, and I could feel the weight of everything crashing down around me. Lisa, of course, was doing her best to play the victim, crying to her friends, spinning stories about how I was abusive, jealous, and mentally unstable. She even tried to turn some of her coworkers against me, claiming I'd been controlling and manipulative for years. It was infuriating, but I kept my cool. Every lie she told, I had proof to counter it. I sat down with my lawyer again, reviewing everything I had gathered. The emails, bank transfers, the photos from her hotel stay, and the witness statements from some of her friends who admitted she'd been planning her escape for months. The inheritance was clear-cut. She hadn't disclosed it to me, kept it hidden, and was actively trying to transfer it overseas. I was finally starting to see the full picture. This wasn't just a jealous husband catching his wife cheating. This was a woman who had meticulously planned her betrayal, including financial theft, for months. The court date was set. I knew I had a strong case, but Lisa wasn't about to give up her plans easily. She started playing dirty, sending me nasty texts, threatening to ruin me if I didn't back off. She claimed I was a terrible husband, that I'd been abusive and possessive. But I had witnesses who could testify that I'd never laid a hand on her, never raised my voice. Meanwhile, she was the one sneaking around, lying and taking money behind my back. One day, I received a call from my investigator. She had one more piece of the puzzle. Lisa had been secretly meeting with a lawyer in another state, trying to get legal advice on how to shield or transfer her inheritance. That was the final nail. It proved she was actively trying to hide assets and escape her responsibilities. I shared this info with my lawyer, and it strengthened my case considerably. The day of the hearing, I was nervous but prepared. I walked into that courtroom knowing I had the truth on my side. Lisa showed up looking frantic, trying to act innocent. Her bitchy smirk was gone. She tried to argue that the inheritance was personal property, and she had every right to do whatever she wanted with it. But the judge wasn't buying her lies. I presented the evidence, laid out the timeline, and explained how she'd been planning her escape for months. The judge listened carefully, scrutinizing every document and testimony. After hours of arguments, he finally ruled in my favor. The inheritance was split, and I was awarded a significant portion of the house, enough to start rebuilding my life. But the real shock was Lisa's reaction. Her face twisted in rage and disbelief as she realized she was losing everything she'd secretly schemed for. She stormed out of the courtroom, screaming about how unfair it all was, how I'd ruined her life. But I didn't care about her tantrum. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of relief. I had exposed her lies, fought for what was mine, and finally got some justice. Still, I knew this wasn't over. There was the aftermath, her threats, the ongoing court battles, and the emotional scars I'd carry. But at least now I had clarity. I knew who she truly was, and I was starting to see a way forward. That night, I sat alone in my new apartment, reflecting on everything. I felt exhausted, betrayed, but also strangely free. I'd learned some hard lessons about trust, deception, and the importance of looking beneath the surface. I'd also learned that sometimes, the biggest betrayals come from those you love most. And as much as it hurt to admit it, I'd been blind for too long. Moving forward, I knew I'd never let anyone manipulate me like that again. I'd rebuild, stronger and wiser, knowing now the kind of woman Lisa truly was: selfish, manipulative, and willing to lie, cheat, and steal her way to what she wanted. And I'd be damned if I let her get away with it. After the court's decision, things didn't exactly settle down overnight. Lisa was furious. She called me every name in the book, tried to threaten me with lawsuits, and even accused me of stalking her again when I started to take steps to secure my share of the inheritance. But I wasn't about to back down. I had fought too hard, uncovered too much, to let her manipulate her way out of this. The biggest blow came when she suddenly filed for divorce, claiming I had stolen $200, $0 from her inheritance. That was her new angle, trying to spin the story that I was some kind of con artist after her money. The thing was, I had no idea where she came up with that figure. I never stole anything from her. All I did was fight for what was legally mine and expose her lies. I knew she was just trying to distract from her own guilt, but it still hit me hard. I felt betrayed all over again, like I'd been sucker punched. In the months that followed, the divorce process was a whirlwind. Lisa was relentless, trying to drag it out, accusing me of all sorts of things, saying I was controlling, abusive, even that I'd been unfaithful. None of it held water, but her accusations made her look desperate. I stayed focused, providing my evidence and making sure I protected my reputation. I knew she was trying to paint me as the bad guy, but I had the truth on my side. Meanwhile, the fight over the beachfront house was heating up. It was worth over $1 million, and Lisa was insisting she owned it outright thanks to her inheritance. I argued that she kept it from me, that she'd planned to leave me with nothing, and that I had a legal right to at least a portion of it. She countered by claiming I'd manipulated her, that I'd stolen from her, and that she'd never agreed to share the house. The court was again involved, and I had to present the evidence of her secret transfers and her lies about the house. That's when I uncovered something else. She'd been secretly trying to sell the house behind my back, even hiring a real estate agent. I caught wind of it just in time. I confronted her, and she screamed that she could do whatever she wanted because the house was hers. I told her I wasn't going to let her just walk away with everything, especially not after all the lies and betrayal. We went to court again, and it was a tense, exhausting process. The judge finally ordered her to hold off on selling the house until the divorce was finalized. Throughout all this chaos, I couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of relief and anger. Relief because I finally had some clarity, some proof that I was right all along. Anger because she'd lied, cheated, and manipulated her way through everything. And I was left wondering how someone I loved could become this selfish, calculating person. The betrayal cut deep, especially knowing she'd been planning her escape with Mark, her secret inheritance, and a whole lot of lies. I kept asking myself if I'd done something wrong, if I'd missed the signs, but deep down I knew the truth. Lisa was the one who had been dishonest from the start. I'd trusted her, given her my life, and she had repaid me with betrayal and deception. It was a hard lesson, but it also made me realize how important it is to be cautious, to watch for the signs of manipulation, and to never ignore your gut instinct. Now I'm trying to pick up the pieces. I've moved out of the house, started over with a new place, and I'm slowly rebuilding my life. The emotional scars are still there, but I feel stronger, more aware of what real betrayal looks like. I don't think I'll ever be the same, but I do know that I'll never let someone manipulate me again. I learned a lot about trust, greed, and how far some people will go for money and revenge. And if there's one thing I'd tell anyone in a similar situation, it's this: trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and never let anyone take you for granted, especially not the ones you love. Looking back now, I realize how much I was blind to before all this chaos unfolded. I thought I knew Lisa, her bitchy attitude, her manipulative streak, but I never suspected how deep her lies went. That she'd be capable of betraying me not just emotionally, but financially, setting her sights on the inheritance and the house she kept secret from me. It's a bitter pill to swallow, knowing I was played for a fool for so long. But I also learned something valuable. Trust is earned and not blindly given. The aftermath has been a roller coaster. I still feel the sting of betrayal, but I also feel relief. Relief that I finally uncovered the truth, that I fought for what was rightfully mine, and that I didn't let her manipulate me into losing everything. The court cases, the lies, the threats, they all took a toll, but I came out stronger on the other side. It's not just about the money or the house anymore. It's about reclaiming my dignity and realizing that I deserve better than someone who would lie and cheat to get what she wants. I've been through a lot of sleepless nights, wondering how I missed the signs or how I let myself get so blindsided. But I also know I was trusting maybe too much, and that's on me. Still, I refuse to let her define my future. I've moved on, got a new place, and started focusing on rebuilding myself. I'm not bitter, just cautious. I've learned to read between the lines, to listen to that little voice that whispers when something's off. This whole experience has changed me. I won't be the naive guy who thought marriage was forever and that everyone was good deep down. No, I see now that some people are driven by greed and selfishness, willing to do anything to get what they want. And I've learned to protect myself against that. I've become more cautious, more aware, and more determined not to let anyone manipulate or betray me again. If I could give one piece of advice to anyone reading this, it's this: don't ignore the red flags. Trust your gut, keep your eyes open, and always protect yourself, financially, emotionally, and legally. People can surprise you, and sometimes they'll do the worst things when you least expect it. But it's also possible to come out stronger, to learn from the pain, and to rebuild your life on a foundation of honesty and self-respect. I don't regret fighting for what's mine, even if it was painful. That pain taught me resilience. That betrayal taught me the importance of vigilance. And now, I'm finally at a point where I can breathe again, knowing I stood up for myself and didn't let her deception win. Life moves on, and so will I. I just hope that anyone else facing something similar remembers. You're stronger than your pain, and there's always a way to turn betrayal into a lesson, one that makes you wiser and more prepared for whatever comes next.